Anybody who truly appreciates food can tell you there are certain bites they will never forget. There are those couple moments in life where you have something so delicious and unique that you continue to think about that food from time to time, like an old friend. For me, there is no place that embodies this like Tacos El Yaqui, a small taco stand in Rosarito, Mexico that serves the taco perrone, a marinated arrachera taco accompanied by pinto beans, guacamole, blackened jalapeno, and smoky hot salsa, all placed on a handmade flour tortilla covered with melted cheese. This is hands down the best taco I've ever had, and my brother and I used to just have days where we'd go from place to place eating tacos. He's even judged a few taco competitions in Southern California, but with these tacos, there is no competition. When I lived in San Diego, we used to cross the border to Rosarito just to get them, and there was never a trip that wasn't worth it. Since moving back home to New Jersey, I yearn for them like West Coasters do for good bagels. There's just nowhere I can get the same beautiful handmade tortillas or that juicy marinated carne asada. It's all just pre-made tortillas and cube steak. So today, on Hungry for More, I try to replicate my favorite tacos in the world. With this recipe, it all starts with the steak. We are going to be using the same as yaqui, arrachera, or as Americans know it, skirt steak. It's tough but fatty and absorbent, making it perfect for marinating and searing. While this used to be a cut of meat as cheap as ground beef, the prevalence of sizzling fajitas and of the simps that order them drove the price up to make it one of the most expensive cuts out there. So, if you're trying to save some money here, you can also buy flank steak for a comparable cut. The marinade that I suspect Yaqui uses is deceptively simple. So I added garlic, and I couldn't decide if I wanted cilantro or coriander, so I added both of them, one chopped, one fresh. I added some orange juice, and I had a case of Corona in the back of my pantry. So I used that for my beer, but you can decide that on your own. I added whole peppercorns, and if you want to add a little adobo now or just do it before charring to get a nice crust, I chose the latter. Put the top on your Tupperware and set that to marinate for at least 12 hours, but I suggest overnight. A side note, the steak can sit in that marinade for up to 4 days. Just so you know, in case time gets away from you, it's a good thing to have in the back of your brain. Now we come to the most important part of this recipe, starting a fire. I am definitely no avid outdoorsman, and I was terrified of starting a forest fire, but I can assure you this was worth the time and is definitely the secret ingredient in this recipe. It also makes for a nice day outside, so bring some beers, some music, some good company, and try to just enjoy the day, because it can make for a nice break from the norm, and for me, it did some good for mental health. First things first, we're going to make our fresh tortillas. There is no comparison between fresh and store-bought tortillas, period. End of conversation. You may have good tacos on imported tortillas, but you won't have incredible ones, and that is just what I believe. And they are a lot simpler to make than most people think. Start off with a hefty bowl scoop of flour, a spoon scoop of baking soda, a sprinkle of salt, and then remove some because that wasn't a sprinkle, it was a dump. Add a scoop of lard, a drizzle of oil, and then mix it until it looks like clumpy sand or cornmeal. Once that is done, add a little bit of water, mix it, then add more water. Don't just dump in too much water haphazardly like I did here, because then you'll have to add flour back in bit by bit to make up for it, and it's kind of a pain in the ass. But yeah, you want to end up with beautiful smooth dough like this that doesn't stick on your fingers when you're holding it. Once you get there, let it rest for 20 to 30 minutes while you're working on other sides. The longer it rests, the easier the dough will be to work with. Side note, half of my family is vegan, so making a vegan version just requires doing a double glug of oil instead of lard. In my opinion, the vegan version turned out just as good, if not better, at least in terms of consistency. So, if you don't have lard or are seeking a healthier option, go that route. While the tortilla dough is resting, we can start blackening our salsa ingredients. I used a jalapeno, a tomato, a bell pepper, 3 tomatillos, an onion, and some garlic with oil in a separate little pot because it would have fallen through the grates. We want a nice char on these, so while they're toasting up, let's get to our guacamole. At Yaqui, there's a simple, fresh, good avocado, lots of lime as soon as it's chopped, salt, pepper, chopped cilantro, or you can use coriander if you prefer that. Then you just mash it into a near puree, or just keep it chunky if you prefer that. We are just trying to match their recipe as closely as possible on my end. By now those veggies should be getting blackened up really nice, so check those out, give them a flip, and once all sides have a nice char, put them in a bowl, add garlic and oil, and a squeeze of lime. From there, this is ready to be dropped into a blender or a food processor, and you can make a beautiful salsa. You can add salt, pepper, cumin, chili powder to taste, I go with light sprinklings for all of those because the veggies and the smoke provide a ton of flavor as is, so you can just do it to your own taste. By now, your tortilla dough should have sat long enough to start cutting up and dividing into appropriately sized balls. Not to brag or anything, but my balls were a little bigger than a golf ball once they were ready to go. I used a tortilla press with some parchment paper and flour to flatten these out because, as I mentioned, I am obsessed with tacos. If you don't have a cast iron tortilla press like my nerdy ass, you can just put some parchment paper on your counter, add 2 tortilla balls, place another sheet of parchment on top, and press them down really good with a baking sheet. It was kind of cold out, and I didn't let the tortillas sit quite long enough, so when I was making these, my tortillas got a little shrinkage when removed from the press. To fix this, I just took each one and treated it like a mini pizza, stretching it by hand. Once those are all done, heat up your work surface, add some oil, and start cooking these up until you got nice brown bubbles on each side. When they are done, stack them in clean dish towels. This is a small trick, but it is very important. The tortillas stay warm this way, and being insulated with one another helps them to steam and stay soft and pillowy. As you can see right here, I have 2 towels, one for vegan tortillas and one for non-vegan. Once you're done with all your tortillas and have them toweled up, it's time to chop some onions. I use this little ulu knife thing because it's quick and I cry really easily, and then I just top with some salt to begin breaking those suckers down. Add that beautiful marinated steak to the hot grill at this point and start charring it up. I removed the cilantro and the coriander I put on top so it wouldn't burn. I then brought a small pot over, added some oil, and then a bit of those onions. Let those brown up real good, and then add a can of pinto beans to cook down. As you can see, one side of our steak has that beautiful black bark. So we flipped it right about here and popped some jalapenos down next to it to blacken while the steak finishes off. Dust those with some oil for good measure, and since we're cooking this outside, the temperatures are hard to know for sure, but just use your best guess to move things around and make sure the fire is hitting everything evenly throughout the cook.
What'd you say? Yeah, they're in there.
Here I also add a cast iron skillet directly to the fire, pour in some high heat avocado oil, then the rest of my onions. Once everything has a nice char and the steak feels done to the touch, bring it to the side to rest for at least 10 minutes. And this time we're going to let the beans cook a little bit more and prepare our jalapenos. This part is really simple. Bring them to the side, remove the stems, add an ass ton of lime juice, a hefty sprinkle of salt, chop to your heart's content, then a little more salt. Yaqui doesn't take out the seeds, so neither will I, but that choice is up to you. Our steaks are nicely rested at this point, so we start cutting, and let me tell you, this was easily the best steak I've ever made. Just look at how juicy that is, how thick and dark the bark of it is. It looks like a brisket, and how pink but not too pink it is on the inside. I could have eaten this steak on its own and it would have been amazing, but the next part is where everything comes together. So, you place your tortilla on the hot surface, add the cheese, then fold this up like a quesadilla for the cheese to melt. I used queso fresco, but this was the only aspect of my approach I will change going forward. Fresco doesn't melt that well, and although it tasted amazing, I think Oaxaca cheese, or Mexican mozzarella as they call it, is a lot closer to what's being used at Yaqui. Regardless, we top with our steak, add a nice scoop of pinto beans and onions, jalapenos, and a spoonful of guac, and a splatter of our smoky salsa. The smells here had me so excited that I grabbed the taco directly off the hot griddle with a knife and walked around going, ouch, 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 this is so hot for like 5 seconds before I finally put it down, squeezed the lime over to cool it, and take my first bite. Which, as you can see by the steam, was still extraordinarily hot. I hope you can see by how quickly my disgusting ass mows through this scorching hot taco how good it was. I disregarded the safety of my mouth because for the first time in nearly 3 years, my taco itch was fully scratched. While I have attempted this recipe numerous times, this is the only one to trigger nostalgia and put my mind back at the open-air tables of Yaqui. Is this recipe as good as theirs? I don't think that's possible. I'm a white guy making these in the woods of New Jersey, but with each bite of these tacos, I felt like the critic from Ratatouille being transported back in time to his happy place. And I think that's what food is all about. Until next time, guys, try these tacos, let me know what you think, and live an awesome life. Take care.